David Murrin is the author of Breaking the Code of History. Tell us a little bit about your background, please.
I studied physics, specialised in geophysics. Spent 3 years in the Papua New Guinean jungle, which was pretty formative for the age of 20 to 23. Saw the way tribes acted and behaved, and saw collective behavioural patterns where tribes essentially shared whole groups of emotions and let them go, and it enabled them to act, defend themselves, be predatory, create a whole lot of basic responses. And I felt very much as if I was looking back in mankind's past at that stage. Only when I came back to civilization, as we call it, and worked on the trading floor at JP Morgan, did I realise really we were no different. It's just our tribes have become more infinite and our boundaries less determinate to our own minds. But we were still sharing emotions, and we're still collective organisms, in effect.
Why did you decide to write Breaking the Code of History?
I'm thoroughly dyslexic, so it's a bit of a joke, really. I was giving speeches on the macro political situation to do with our business, and people kept saying, you must write a book. And after 9/11, I came up with this whole idea the world had fundamentally changed. 9/11 was not just a random event, and there would be a huge series of consequences as a result of that moment. And I formulated the basic theories of the book about 2 weeks later, and those were the basis of my speeches. And over a period of 5 years, people called for me to write a book, and I really couldn't write. Writing was not something, as a dyslexic person, I was able to do until my twins arrived. They were my second and third children. And a week later, I was feeding them 1 o'clock in the morning, thinking, my goodness, I've got more equity in this planet than I've ever had before in its future. I really must try and write. And all of a sudden, I could write relatively fluently, and that was the beginning of a process that took another 3 years.
So what are the 5 stages of empire?
The first is you regionalise, the second is you ascend to empire, the third is you mature, and the fourth is you overextend, and the fifth is you decline. And in effect, they're the fractals of an individual's life, or a business, or any entity like a nation in different shapes or forms. It seems to be the algorithm of social growth and decline.
How do you see the power balance changing between the West and the new emerging nations of the East?
It has changed already. I think first of all you've got to look at the power of the tectonic forces that are taking place. The Western Christian, I was fascinated by Western empires having much shorter durations than the older empires where technology had changed at a lower rate. And I couldn't understand it, and I actually came to realise we have a thing called a super Western Christian empire, which is an amalgamation of the Portuguese, the Spanish, the Dutch, the French, the British, the Germans tried twice, and the Americans, all with a Christian set of values. And that actually produced a system that had the same duration as a standard empire before it. And America is the last of the Western Christian empires. It's in decline, and for 100 years Asia has been building a new super empire that started with the Japanese and is now led by the Chinese and the Indians. And that's moving rapidly into the vacuum of Western decline. And you're talking about people asking questions about historical implications and how they affect us now. Much as tectonic forces sit and pressures in plates build over 100 years, they take 60 seconds to release and they change the landscape. That's exactly how geopolitical forces work. So this change is imminent. It's going to be incredibly rapid. It'll be shocking and traumatizing to the West. And there's very little we can really do to change it. All we can do is modify the way it happens if we become aware of the forces that we're involved in and subject to.
Can you give us an overview of the geopolitics of oil?
Well, the first thing is, ever since it was first really found in quantities in the States, it was found in Pennsylvania initially, back in the early 20th century. And the big revolution was Spindletop, where they found a huge great gusher that produced oil that would be for industrial quantities. And that gave America huge advantages in terms of its technology for drilling and extracting. And of course Britain, when we took over the Middle East after the First World War, gave us an ideal situation where this oil was found and readily available, with help with American technology, how you'd extract it. And of course when we lost our power, and it was the end of the British Empire, that's pretty definitively by the time of Suez, it was America that took over in the Middle East. And oil is ultimately the power source for our modern society. Unfortunately, it is limited. It is distinctly limited. Saudi Arabia has been lying about its reserves for a long time. recognising that if it didn't lie, it wouldn't have the same power in OPEC. And the simple truth is the distribution of wells is a Gaussian distribution. You find a few big ones and you find lots of small ones. And all the big ones are being found on above the surface, apart from maybe in very remote places in the north of the planet. And all that's left is deep oceanic wells, which are expensive to extract. So it's a limited resource. And I think also with a shift in power in the Middle East, which is another whole topic, but they're going through their own regionalisation process. And a civil war regionalisation, they will reject democracy, and they'll reject Western values, and the winner will be the Chinese. And ultimately it won't be the price of oil, it'll be whether we can buy it from them.